It started like any other call. On the morning of Sunday, June 30th, 2025, fire crews in Kootenai County, Idaho, received a dispatch for a brush fire near Canfield Mountain, just outside Coeur. A blaze had broken out in a remote, heavily wooded area, an unremarkable event during the dry summer months. 3 highly experienced first responders suited up and headed out. Battalion Chief John Morrison, 52 years old, had been serving the community for nearly 3 decades with the Coeur d'Alene Fire Department. Battalion Chief Frank Harwood, 43, a 17-year veteran of Kootenai County Fire and Rescue and a former Army National Guard combat engineer. Engineer David Tisdall, 47, with over 2 decades of service, was the 3rd man on the scene. Between the 3 of them, they carried nearly 70 years of firefighting experience. They had seen flames threaten neighborhoods. They'd pulled people from burning homes. But nothing, not even war in Harwood's case, could prepare them for what they were walking into. The fire was no accident. Authorities later confirmed the brush fire was intentionally set. It wasn't to destroy land. It wasn't an act of protest. It was bait, a trap, a calculated move by a 20-year-old man named Wess Val Roley. He'd parked his vehicle nearby and waited. When the fire crew arrived, they did what they always do. They approached with calm professionalism. They began assessing the scene, preparing to contain the blaze. But something felt off. Roley's vehicle was parked unusually close to the area of ignition. That's when one of the firefighters approached him and asked, calmly, routinely, for him to move his car. And that's when it happened. Without warning, Roley pulled a gun and opened fire on the men. The shots rang out through the trees. Sharp, methodical, relentless. Chief Morrison and Chief Harwood were hit immediately. The attack was so sudden and brutal. They didn't even have a chance to react, authorities later said. Engineer David Tisdall was also shot, despite critical injuries. He managed to survive long enough to be evacuated by emergency responders and airlifted to a nearby hospital. The ambush triggered a massive multi-agency manhunt. Over 300 law enforcement officers from local, state, and federal agencies flooded the mountain. Armed tactical units, K-9S, and helicopters scoured the dense terrain. Roley had vanished into the woods. Using cell phone data and search teams, police zeroed in on a nearby wooded area. There, they found Roley's body near a weapon, dead from an apparent self-inflicted gunshot wound. The suspect had lured these men, public servants, into an ambush, and then, like a coward, he took his own life before justice could arrive. Investigators have yet to uncover a clear motive, but what's undeniable is the level of planning, setting the fire, waiting in ambush, shooting when confronted, then disappearing into the woods with tactical knowledge of the terrain. The entire firefighting and law enforcement community is reeling. Flags flew at half-staff across Idaho. Governor Brad Little called it a heinous direct assault on Idaho's public servants. Nationwide, firefighters mourned 2 of their own, not lost to flames, but to bullets. Chief Harwood and Chief Morrison weren't just co-workers. They were leaders, mentors, fathers, husbands. Engineer Tisdall underwent multiple surgeries and, as of early July, remains in critical but stable condition. Why did Wess Val Roley do it? Who was he trying to send a message to? Neighbors described Roley as a loner, someone who had been increasingly paranoid and withdrawn in the months before the ambush. There are rumors of possible mental health struggles, online radicalization, and even conspiracy-driven ideologies. But investigators haven't released an official motive. What they do know is this. This wasn't random. This wasn't spontaneous. This was an act of premeditated violence against men who showed up to help. The attack has renewed a nationwide debate. Should first responders, firefighters, be trained or equipped for violent confrontations? It's an uncomfortable conversation. These men and women fight nature, not gunfire. They don't wear body armor. They don't expect bullets. But this incident changes that expectation forever. And in Coeur d'Alene, it left a permanent scar. When the smoke cleared and the bodies were identified, one name stood out. Wess Val Roley, 20 years old, from Rathdrum, Idaho. Until June 30th, 2025, he was virtually unknown, just another face in a rural North Idaho town. But now the world was asking, why would a 20-year-old lure firefighters to their deaths? What was going on in his mind? And perhaps most chilling of all, was he planning something even worse? Wess Roley wasn't a hardened criminal. He didn't have a long rap sheet. But the pieces, when finally laid out, painted a portrait of a disturbed and possibly radicalized young man. According to Kootenai County investigators, Roley had been growing increasingly paranoid in the months leading up to the attack. He was isolated, withdrawn from neighbors, and rarely seen in public. Neighbors described his behavior as off, but not threatening. One said, he never made eye contact. He didn't wave, but no one expected this. He lived alone in a small home outside Rathdrum. Reports confirmed that he wasn't employed at the time and had minimal contact with the community. Investigators quickly secured Roley's devices and online activity, phones, computers, and a gaming console. What they found raised disturbing questions. Extensive searches on law enforcement tactics, survivalist websites, including articles on homemade traps and ambush strategies, online forums discussing anti-government ideologies, though no direct links to extremist groups have been confirmed. Videos tagged with keywords like luring fire attack and survivor mentality. While there's no manifesto, authorities say his search history showed planning, especially around how first responders operate. At the scene, Roley's body was found near a high-powered rifle, the same weapon used in the attack. He was dressed in camouflage, lying in a concealed area with a scoped rifle, extra ammunition, and tactical gear. Inside his vehicle and home, police recovered additional firearms, multiple boxes of ammo, a printed map of the Canfield Mountain trail system, a makeshift supply bag containing water, energy bars, and a first aid kit. Authorities now believe the fire was carefully set to lure in firefighters to a kill zone, with Roley already positioned in a sniper-style hideout. June 30th, 2025, morning. Roley drives to the Canfield area early and starts a small brush fire. He positions himself uphill, giving him clear visibility of the access road and trail. He parks nearby and waits, rifle ready. Fire crews arrive. When Battalion Chiefs John Morrison and Frank Harwood, along with engineer David Tisdall, arrive, they begin assessing the situation. They ask Roley, calmly, to move his vehicle so trucks can get through. At that moment, he opens fire from his sniper position. Aftermath, Morrison and Harwood are killed almost instantly. Tisdall is critically wounded. The shooter flees deeper into the forest. A massive manhunt follows for over 12 hours. Later that day, tactical teams find Roley's body in the woods. He'd turned the gun on himself. A firearm was recovered nearby. It matched the casings found at the scene. So far, no clear motive has emerged. But officials say the level of premeditation was chilling. He created a scenario where firefighters would be vulnerable, focused on controlling a blaze, not defending themselves. He waited for the right moment and executed the attack with precision. Then, he chose suicide over capture, possibly to avoid revealing deeper plans. There's no known manifesto, no final message, no confirmed group affiliation, but the clues suggest someone angry, delusional, and perhaps obsessed with creating maximum impact with minimum exposure. Officials continue to analyze Roley's digital trail, phone logs, and social media accounts. Though sparse, they're checking for private messages to extremist forums, downloaded manuals, or PDF guides for tactical ambushes, any signs of previous attempts or fire-setting patterns. So far, it appears Roley acted alone, but his level of planning has drawn comparisons to mass shooters and domestic terrorists. In many cases, there are warning signs, violent threats, manifestos, or online rants. In Roley's case, the warning was a fire. That was his signal. It wasn't a cry for help. It was a trap, and 3 firefighters walked right into it, armed only with hoses and courage. As investigators dug deeper into the past of a troubled young man, the community turned its focus to honoring those who were lost. John Morrison had served his community for 28 years. Frank Harwood was a father, a veteran, and a beloved mentor. David Tisdall, still clinging to life, became a symbol of resilience. And across Idaho, fire stations hung black mourning bands over their station signs. The names of Morrison and Harwood were added to the National Fallen Firefighters Memorial. The flames had long been extinguished. The shooter was dead, but the community of Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, was only beginning to process what had happened. This wasn't a wildfire tragedy. This was a deliberate ambush, planned with precision and carried out in cold blood. And now, two fire departments, Kootenai County and Coeur d'Alene, were facing the unimaginable, bearing their own. Governor Brad Little declared July 1st a statewide day of mourning. Flags were lowered across Idaho. Vigils were held on street corners, in fire stations, and on mountain trails. The names John Morrison and Frank Harwood were spoken with reverence. At the memorial, their turnout gear stood on display. Empty boots, helmets, and photos surrounded by flowers and handwritten notes from children who had once seen them as heroes in red trucks. They ran toward danger and paid the ultimate price, said Fire Chief Brian Zappala through tears. Across the country, fire stations rang their bells in tribute. 2 rings for fallen, 1 for the wounded. In the aftermath, investigators and experts began asking uncomfortable questions. Could signs of Roley's instability have been spotted earlier? Should local law enforcement have been alerted to the fire call before the firefighters arrived? Should fire crews in rural areas be trained to expect hostile threats? Kootenai County Sheriff Bob Norris admitted this was a new kind of threat. We train to fight fires. We don't train for war zones. The attack prompted urgent reviews of fire response protocols, especially in rural, unregulated zones. Officials proposed closer cooperation between police and fire departments, especially on remote call-outs. There were also calls from firefighters' unions for ballistic vests in fire rigs, body cams in volatile zones, joint tactical training with law enforcement. But these changes would come too late for Morrison and Harwood. Engineer David Tisdall, the only survivor, became the center of both hope and heartbreak. Critically wounded with multiple gunshot injuries, he was airlifted to Kootenai Health Hospital, where doctors fought to stabilize him. For days, he remained unconscious, with his wife and children at his side. By mid-July, Tisdall regained consciousness, though still unable to speak. Doctors said it would be a long road, but he was alive. Fellow firefighters visited him often, one saying, "He carries their memory now, and will carry him." The attack shocked the country. President and First Lady issued a public statement. "We grieve for the firefighters lost in Idaho. These brave men ran toward danger and were met with violence that should never happen in a civil society." National news networks ran specials on the vulnerability of first responders. True crime creators, news panels, and public safety advocates debated whether this was a one-time tragedy or the start of something darker. Some began to call it a first responder ambush epidemic, pointing to similar incidents in recent years. Police lured to false 911 calls, EMTs attacked during rescues, and now firefighters shot while battling flames. Frank Harwood, a father of 2 and an Army veteran, was remembered as a calm leader. His unit described him as the kind of guy who took the radio off your belt when you were overwhelmed and never said a word about it. John Morrison, a 28-year department veteran, was weeks away from retirement. He'd already submitted the paperwork. He planned to buy an RV and drive with his wife across the U.S. Now she was left with folded flags and unanswered questions. Their fire departments held a last call ceremony where dispatch calls their names one final time over the radio. Silence answered, and the bell tolled 3 times. The Canfield Mountain area has since seen a wave of memorials, community cleanups, and first responder appreciation events. But beneath the surface, there's unease. Residents now glance twice when they hear sirens. Fire crews hesitate when pulling into remote areas. Every radio call that comes in carries the memory of what happened that morning. This wasn't just a tragedy. It was a targeted killing of public servants, an execution disguised as a wildfire. It redefined what it means to be a firefighter. They don't just run into buildings anymore. Sometimes they're walking into an ambush. And the scars left by Wess Val Roley, a 20-year-old nobody from Rathdrum, may linger for decades longer than the smoke on Canfield Mountain.